and welcome to Applicata Biblia. My name is Mark, and thank you so much for stopping by as we get into another little bit of God's Word. We are in the series that I call Characters in the Bible, or a walk through the Bible, the overview of the Bible, just looking at the characters as they apply historically in the structure of the Scriptures. So today we're going to be getting into a character named Ruth. Now, it's important to understand that Ruth is not a judge. We pretty much finished the study of Judges with Samson, and I'll give you a brief outline of what happens in the rest of Judges. But Ruth is kind of that next story after Judges, and so it's important to kind of understand what's going on with her, why she's important, that kind of thing. And moving forward, we're getting closer to the time of the kings. So just so you know, that will be the next section. We've only got a few more lessons in this section of the Judges, and then we'll get into the time of the kings and prophets. So let's see what we got. Well, we're going to be in chapter 1 of Ruth. We're not going to cover the whole story. We're going to do a couple of lessons with the character Ruth, and then and Boaz. That'll be the next one, and then we're going to get into the rest of the Judges. There's a couple of guys who are prophets. They're kind of like judges in a sense, but not in the warrior type sense that we've seen that that Israel has required because of their disobedience to God. So what about the rest of Judges? Let's take a look at this. The rest of Judges, there's this guy named Micaiah. He's a thief. He steals his mother's silver and he gives it back to her. And she's like, oh, you're so good. God loves you. Thank you for giving my money back. It's a weird story. I don't know why that happens that way. But anyway, he gives it back to her. And they end up she gives it to him, and they make an idol with it. And it's just really weird. They make this idol. And then he goes out, and this Levite he goes and gets this Levite and makes him his own personal priest. And so he's got this idol. Now he's got an idol priest for the idol. It's just really strange, and it shows really what it does. All it's doing is showing that even though God has delivered them from Egypt, even though he's given them victories throughout the region, they made 40 years, God took care of them in the desert. Even though God has done all that, it only takes one or two generations for people to forget who God is. That's one of the main thrusts of what we should learn from this. And it doesn't matter if it's Israel or if it's us. That is a very easy thing to do, to fall away from God. I know that there are lots of Christian doctrines out there that say you can't fall away. That's foolishness. It's not true. You can fall away. The hallmark of being a Christian is your freedom of choice. And choosing God is what brings him glory. Okay, so the Danites in chapter 18, they steal the idol and the priest, and then they take this idol and they set up this perpetual idolatry. And it says until they're taken away. And I don't know if that means by the Assyrians or what, but they set up this idolatry, and it's constantly going on. I'm assuming it's even during the kings, which reveals a lot about the Danites, unfortunately. So there's this Levite, and he's traveling in chapter 19, he's traveling with his concubine. Now, a concubine is it's a wife, but she doesn't have access to the inheritances. She does. She gets to live with this person. She gets to enjoy the food and everything else there. She probably works there, and a lot of people just want to say, well, she's a prostitute. No, she's not a prostitute. She's just what we would call a second class wife because she does not have access to the she doesn't have a promise of the inheritance when her husband dies. She's just being taken care of because she's probably destitute or something like that. So it protects the wife or wives he already has and has made promises. Marriage in those days wasn't like it is today. They would have marriages were between families, not just between a man and a woman. Okay, so they go traveling and they go stay in Gibeah. They actually were going to go to the city where the Jebusites were, but they say no, we don't want to stay there because ooh, the Jebusites, yeah, they're creepy. So they go to one of their own cities in Gibeah, and these people come and they want to assault the man, and not a good way. And I don't mean just beating him up. They want to assault him, and I can't say what it is on YouTube. You have to read it yourself if you want to. But anyway, they end up not getting him, but his wife. They turn over this concubine, which is it's just a horrible story. Turn over the concubine, and they assault her all night long. And he comes out onto the porch in the morning, and she's laying there dead after being ravaged all night by these men of the city. And this is how far away Israel has fallen. They had just really fallen away. So you have people making their own idols and making up their own priests. You can't do that. God gave them a law already. Remember, we got into Moses. During Moses' time, all of these things on how they're supposed to happen was given to them by God, but they don't do that. So this is how far away they've fallen. So the guy, the priest, is so upset. He's so angry. He divides her, and again, I can't tell you exactly how this works. You need to read it for yourself. He divides her into 12 pieces and sends her throughout the land to show everybody the great, apostasy, horrible thing that has happened in their land. So in chapter 20, Israel fights Benjamin, right? This is where this happened. They end up fighting Benjamin and going, what are you doing? And they're defending themselves for some reason. They're defending this great, horrible sin that has taken place. And tens of thousands of Benjamites are slaughtered because of it. And a lot of Israel loses their own people as well, of the other 10 or 11 tribes that are involved with this battle. They lose a lot of people as well. It's just so many people. And again, we see that they're not together. They're so undivided that because God is not their king, they're not seeing God as their king. God is not the one leading them. They're just doing whatever. So in chapter 21, Israel, as much as they wanted to exact justice for what was done to that concubine, they feel bad that they killed so much of Benjamin's men. And took so many of they killed so many people, I'll just say that. And so they give Benjamin a bunch of the wives because they didn't have enough wives. They didn't have enough women for wives. So they kind of help them. They kind of repent, they kind of feel bad about it. They change their mind about, they basically are saying we shouldn't be exterminating one of our own. We need to take care of them. And so that's what they do. And that's how that's a terrible ending to the book of Judges in my mind. But it just shows how far people fall. Okay, and the two things we should see is that one of the phrases that we see is there was no king in the land. And everyone did what they thought was right in their own mind. And this is a recurring theme about Judges. People just do what they think is right. They're not really looking to God. And maybe we can point a finger at the Levites going, hey, you guys are supposed to be keeping the law. I don't know what was going on. But because there was no king, uh, they weren't following a single a single standard, and it should have been God. And this is where we're going to see it, because eventually we're going to get to the kings, and this is going to be a problem that God contends with them about. Now, it's not against their law to have a king. I think I've talked about this. Deuteronomy gives them rules for the king. This is what your king should do. Be ready to do this. Here's what will happen. And kings, this is what you need to do. You need to not, uh, gather up money and go get horses and wealth. God was very specific about what was supposed to happen with the kings, and everything He said not to do, they end up doing all of them. Every single one of, even the good kings, end up doing all of those things that God said not to do. And for them, I think they felt like it was a matter of, it was a pragmatic thing. Look, all of these people have, they have horses and they have chariots. We need to be able to fight them. I mean, God's with us, yes, but this will help us. And so they all see that. But we'll get to that. So today, though, we're going to be talking about Ruth. Now, the story of Ruth is a beautiful story, and it's beautiful because of love, because of the love that we see Ruth have, and we're going to get into all of that. So we're going to be reading from Ruth chapter 1. We're going to read verses 1 through 5 to begin with, and we'll see what we can get out of that. And it happened in the days of the judging of those judging, there was a famine in the land, and a man from Bethlehem, Judah, went to live in the fields of Moab. So he's going pretty far away. He and his wife and his 2 sons. And the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife Naomi. So now you hear both of the names. Remember, we were talking about Samson's dad, Manoah, and they never did tell the mom's name, even though the mom was the one with all this faith. I thought it was interesting, but here we know the name of Elimelech's wife, and her name is Naomi. Naomi is a very loving person too, and she is such a strong character in the story. I think they felt they had to name her. And the name of his 2 sons were Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites from Bethlehem, Judah. So here they are from the tribe of Ephraim, living in Judah. So they're already kind of, for whatever reason, they're kind of living in different places, and now they're going to Moab. And they came to the fields of Moab and remained there. And Naomi's husband, Elimelech, died. That's a terrible thing. Okay, it isn't like today. And she was left, and her 2 sons. Oh, good, she has 2 sons. That's great. And they took wives to themselves, women of Moab. Probably not a good idea, right? That's the thinking. Moabites, uh-oh. The name of one was Orpah, and the name of the second, Ruth. And they lived there about 10 years, and they also died, both of them, Mahlon and Chilion. And the woman was bereaved of her 2 children, so this is about Naomi, and of her husband. So here's Naomi, an Ephraim person, tribe person, has moved away, has gone to this foreign land with her 2 sons. They take a couple of wives. Her husband dies. Her sons die. So, like I say, this isn't like today where you have life insurance, and if your husband dies, you got a little pad there to get you going somewhere. No, you don't have that necessarily. Let's remember, they were already strangers in a strange land. So she's kind of stuck there in Moab with these 2 daughters that aren't even of her own tribe, which was an important thing in those days. So describe what happened to the following people: Elimelech, Mahlon, and Chilion. They all die. They all pass away. And they're all moving for whatever reason. Doesn't say why. Obviously, they were in some sort of financial straits. Um, and for whatever reason, he didn't have an inheritance of land or something. Or maybe there was a famine and they just had to move. So what happened to Orpah, Ruth, and Naomi? Well, there's these women, and Naomi and Ruth aren't in a strange land, but Orpah is, right? Or Naomi, I'm sorry, Naomi's not in the strange land, but uh, she is in a strange land, and her two daughters aren't. Wow, I got that straight finally. So Naomi is kind of, imagine that if you were her, you have to put yourself in her position. You have no means of income, and you're in a foreign country. And in those days, those were two strikes. No husband, foreign country, two strikes right there. Now it doesn't mean that Moab was necessarily mean to Israel, but they didn't always have a good relationship. Okay, let's read 6 through 14. She rose up, she and her daughters-in-law, and turned back from the fields of Moab. For she had heard in the fields of Moab that Jehovah had visited his people. So maybe there was some famine or something. To give food to them. And she went out from the place where she had been, and her two daughters-in-law were with her. And they went in the way to return to the land of Judah. And Naomi said to her two daughters-in-law, go, each return to the house of her mother. May Jehovah deal kindly with you as you have done with the dead and with me. So she's already hamstrung. She's by herself, and these two girls. She's thinking, I can't. It's going to be hard enough when we get back to home where I'm from for myself. I can't take these girls with me. And she tells them, may Jehovah grant to you that you find rest, each in the house of her husband. And she kissed them, and they lifted up their voice and wept. So she's saying, go back to your country and get married again. And they said to her, nevertheless, we will go back with you to your people. So they said that to her. And Naomi said, turn back, my daughters. Why should you go with me? Are there yet sons to me in my belly that they should be husbands for you? Turn back, my daughters, and go, for I am too old to belong to a husband. Though I should say there is hope for me that I should be tonight with a husband, and I should also bear sons, will you wait for them that they might grow up? Even if I had children, what are you going to do? Wait 20 years before they're grown up? Come on. Will you shut yourselves up for them, not to belong to a husband for that amount of time? Come on. No, my daughters, for it is much more bitter. This is blocked off, so I can't read it. I would suggest you read it. But she's basically saying, the hand of Jehovah has gone against me. She's just basically saying, this is a bitter time for me. Not that she's bitter against God, but it's not a good time, okay? And they lifted up their voice and wept again, and Orpah kissed her daughters. And again, these words are covered up, so I can't read them. But it basically is saying that Orpah kisses her and leaves, but Ruth clings to her. So Ruth is not letting go of Naomi. Why is that? Well, describe the relationship between Naomi and her daughters-in-law. Well, obviously, Naomi is a good mother. And whatever time they've spent there, they were treated well. And they know love. This is very apparent. They know love within this family, whatever it is. I like to say it's Jehovah. I hope it's because they were being godly people that these daughters-in-law just didn't want to leave Naomi. And you can see the love between them. Okay, verses 15 through the rest. And she said, see, your sister-in-law has turned back to her people and her gods. You turn back after your sister-in-law. And Ruth said, do not entreat me to leave you. Do not turn back from following you. For where you go, I will go. This makes you want to cry to listening to this. Where you go, I will go. Where you stay, I will stay. For your people shall be my people, and your God, my God. Whoa! I mean, that's a wow moment. Look at the faith of Ruth here. Look at this. This is amazing. She can just go back. She can get married again. It's not a big deal. It's not the end of the world because her husband died. She's not bound to anybody. She's childbearing age. And she says, no, I want to be with you. And I think that says a lot about Naomi and her family in general. She sees love there. Why? And I'm hoping that it's because Naomi herself was a godly woman. I just hope that's what it was. It just doesn't say that. You just assume so. I assume so. Uh, where you die, I will die, and there I will be buried. May Jehovah do to me, and more so, if anything but death, part you and me. Amazing. That floors me. And she saw that she had made herself strong to go with her, and she ceased to speak to her. And so we're talking about Naomi. And why does Naomi realize that Ruth means business? Because of that little speech. That is so strong, and that is really, that's an important thing to remember, right? Words can be very strong. There's an old saying when I was growing up, sticks and stones can hurt my bones or break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And, the idea behind that is to not let words hurt you. People will say things, but words are meaningless. But words do carry meaning. And I think nowadays maybe we've taken that whole concept a little too far with safe spaces and all that. Because sometimes we just need to hear what we need to hear, especially when it comes to the truth about God. So Naomi knows this. And again, this is just because I think there's a special bond here between Ruth and Naomi that Naomi just let her know. And Naomi sees something about this family, about Naomi, about the way that they conducted themselves, that is, I'm assuming, very godly. And I'm just going to keep saying that because I don't know any other reason. If they were cruel to them, those girls probably would have ran. As soon as their husband died, I'm out. But that didn't happen. Okay, let's read 19 through 22. And they went, both of them, until they came into Bethlehem. And it happened as they came into Bethlehem, all the city was moved at them. And they said, is this Naomi? And she said to them, do not call me Naomi, call me bitterness. And again, these words are covered up. I'm going to have to fix this next time, sorry. Call me bitterness, because I think it says because God has dealt bitterly with me. I went out full, and Jehovah has brought me back empty. Why do you call me Naomi, since Jehovah has set his eye against me, and the Almighty has done evil to me? And Naomi returned, and Ruth the Moabitess, her daughter-in-law, with her, who returned from the fields of Moab. And they came to Bethlehem at the beginning of the barley harvest. So there's two harvests. Typically, one was the barley harvest, and later in the fall was the wheat. So this is the beginning of harvest. And so what do the names Naomi and Mara mean? Why did Naomi change her name? Do you think God causes all things to happen to us, and why? Okay, so this is embarrassing. I didn't look up what Naomi means, but you know what? I can do it right now. And this is one of the things I recommended was for studying was to get eSword. Okay, so with eSword, this is a little commercial for eSword. With eSword, I can go to the book of Ruth. Go to chapter 1, and we'll go to verse 18. And she said to them, Call me not Naomi. Why would she say that? What does that name mean? Well, you can see here in this version of the King James, it has all the strong definitions. So you just press right on there. Oh, her name means pleasant. And the root is agreeableness or delight. So her name alone means delightful and agreeable. And she's saying, how can you call me this? I'm very bitter right now. Um, she says, the Lord has testified against me and the Almighty has afflicted me, in the King James. So she feels like, for some reason, uh, you know, God has sent her down this road and she's being afflicted by it. So Mara, what do the names Naomi and Mara mean? I don't know what Mara. Why did I ask that question? Oh, call me Mara. Sorry. Call me Mara. It means bitter. So that's what she's saying. She's saying, don't call me happy-go-lucky, pleasant lady, because I'm very bitter right now. And I don't think that means necessarily that she has hatred toward God. It's just she's very worried about her life. Yeah? Wouldn't you be if you lost your job and then you found out you owed a bunch of money or something and you had no way to pay it and there was no way to what's going to happen next? And this is what she's going through. So one of the main points that I bring out to my class is that Ruth had two choices, right? Uh, this is Ruth. One was to return to her people, remarry, and live out her days with a new family, no problem. Her other choice was to go with Naomi. Now, this is what she understood, what she was getting herself into, and this is why it's so powerful. This is faith. For whatever it was, she has found faith with her mother-in-law and that family. If she went with Naomi, it meant she would be a stranger in a strange land. Since she had already been married, it would be difficult for her to find a husband. Essentially, Naomi had nothing to offer Ruth, yet Ruth's love for Naomi made her stay. And then I asked the class to list the things that we must do for one another to develop this kind of love. And of course, I think as per usual, this reveals how we are expected to become more godly, more godlike, more loving. And Jesus is the one who brings that to the forefront. He's the one when he's asked, they're trying to trick Jesus and they say, or they're trying to test him. What's the most, important law in the laws? And he says he doesn't even go to the Ten Commandments. He brings up some other laws. Love God and love your neighbor. Now, love your neighbor is part of the Levitical law, but it isn't those 10 commandments, right? The 10 commandments. He doesn't even go there because that is absolutely the most powerful thing we can do for one another. And it is absolutely the thing that will overcome so many things. And that was what I think Ruth saw in Naomi. And again, I can't stress this enough because this actually applies to our own Christian life. When people come to our homes or when we invite people in, or even when we're not in our homes, when we're just out, are we kind to people? Are we practicing the fruit of the Spirit? And someday, maybe if you haven't looked it up, look up what fruits of the Spirit and what it is. And they're basically characteristics. And I've got a whole sermon I'm going to be preaching someday, I don't know when, if I'm ever asked, about what that means. But that's what Christianity means. That's what Jesus brings to the forefront. of his teaching. That's it. Okay, thank you so much for listening. Now we're going to get into not the rest of the story, although I will explain how the rest of the story plays out. But we're going to get into the next character of the story, who is Boaz. And I would just say, be ready to forget about convention and what you think is good and what you think is right. And culturally, be ready. Be ready culturally for what happens next, because I think there are some really great lessons in this next part of the story. Thank you so much for stopping by. We'll see you in the next one.